Welcome to tonight's program, and I thank those of you who braved the weather to join us on Downtown Renewal, Community Economic Revitalization. The program is co-sponsored by United University Professions, UUP, and by the SUNY Oneonta Departments of History, Political Science, Sociology, and ALS. Dr. Michael McAvoy is the organizer of tonight's program and the moderator. He will introduce the program, and he will introduce our very distinguished panelists. Dr. McAvoy is the chair of the Department of Economics at SUNY Oneonta. He is a UUP academic delegate, and he is also experienced at organizing and moderating college and community programs. He is the author of scholarly works on economics and on baseball. And as former Mayor Katz can attest, that we know ways in which the two intersect. And actually Mike has had them intersect in some of his writings. Now, a word about the cameras. I can't comment in terms of the press, but in terms of the camera that we have set up, it'll be trained solely on the panel, and they have given their permission. And we will do some writing, and we'll also do some, posting. However, we won't have it on the audience. Some of you may prefer not to, so we won't have it on the audience, and we may quote without attributing to any particular individual, in terms of the article that we write. But the only people who have comments directly attributable to them will be the panelists. And without further ado, Dr. McAvoy.
Thank you, Bill. I don't know, is this on? All right, it's on. Okay, so let's see. Thank you for coming. We have a wonderful program tonight. I have lots of thanks to give, but I think in the interest of time, I'll go right into the bylaws. So in alphabetical order, we have Barbara Ann Egan. At the end, we have Gary Herzig. Jeff Katz is next to Gary, and Dr. Ellis Thomas is next to Barbara Ann. Okay, so Jeff Katz will lead off. Jeff is a former mayor of Cooperstown, America's most beautiful village. He's the author of 2 books on baseball. One is Split Season 1981 for Nandomania, The Bronx Zoo, and The Strike That Saved Baseball. And, I do have a baseball card from that book, and I can't find it. When I do, I'm going to want an autograph. The other book is titled The Kansas City A's and the Wrong Half of the Yankees. If you Google him, you'll see he has numerous other writings. Previously, Jeff traded options at the Chicago Board Options Exchange. Next is Dr. Alex Thomas. He is professor of sociology and a department chair. Dr. Thomas received his PhD from Northeastern University, then wrote a book in Gotham's Shadow. In this, he compares the impact of economic restructuring in an urban and rural environment. Is that right, Alex? Yeah. You're looking at me like this. In the evolution of the ancient city, he traces the relationship between cities and the hinterland from the first sedentary communities to the advanced urban systems of the Bronze Age. In critical rural theory, he examines the cultural relationship between urban society and the rural communities found within. He has authored numerous other books and articles. Third in the order is Barbara Ann Egan, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Otsego County Chamber of Commerce. Barbara Ann began her career on the path of serving others as a family support specialist working for the September 11 Recovery Program with the American Red Cross. Barbara Ann created the first 9/11 Family Support Group, an initiative that became a template for replication. Under her leadership since 2012, the Chamber of Commerce was honored by the Business Council of New York State as its 2013 Chamber of the Year. Beginning in 2016, the Chamber has provided Otsego County high school students with externships in area businesses. Barbara Ann is a graduate of SUNY Oneonta, and she's earned an MBA. Betty Cleanup is Gary Herzig, mayor of the city of Oneonta, working as an inner-city junior high school science teacher. Gary first discovered Oneonta in 1975 while visiting friends. So, of course, he leaves New York City. Since then, he has operated his own small business, served as the director of the Oneonta Job Corps Center, and retired as chief operations officer at Opportunities for Otsego. During the past 17 years, he has been successful in bringing nearly $10 million in new funding to our community. Gary was elected mayor in 2015. Prior to that, Gary served as the vice chair of the Oneonta Planning Commission and the chair of the Oneonta Board of Assessment and Review. He served in Oneonta's Comprehensive Planning Committee, Zoning Task Force, and Housing Task Force. Now in baseball, there are home field ground rules, and we always follow those. And I'll allow each speaker to speak 10 minutes. Now, like any good conference organizer, I have my 2-minute warning sign. It's right there, guys. And you know what's going to happen? I'm going to flash the sign, I'll try to catch your eye, and then I'm going to let you finish. So take however much time you need. And at the conclusion of our 4 presentations, I'll allow each person to make remarks on what they've heard tonight, and perhaps we'll hear a discussion in our panel. Following that, I'll invite questions from our audience, and I'll ask that you refrain from asking a question until you are called upon. Thank you. Well, you know, actually, Jeff, let me go through my presentation.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So here's our beautiful campus, and in Oneonta, the main campus. Then over to prior, so I want to thank Todd Foreman and John Valenti for collecting this data for me upon my request, and it was really great that they were able to turn this around in very fast fashion. So over the last 10 years, $182 million on improvements have been expended on the campus plant here. By the early part of the next decade, there's an enrollment management plan that will increase the student body by approximately 10%. So this is a growing campus that has a lot of investments to maintain the plant. We have 2 new buildings recently. Both projects totaled $13.4 million. The Welcome Center just opened recently, and last fall we had Red Dragon Outfitters building open up. Over the last 10 years, we have roughly $140 million completed in renewals, renovations, rehabs. And that includes physical science. Fitzel is pictured here. It's a beautiful building. The residence halls, and we have an ongoing project in the library. If you haven't seen the first floor of the library, it's very amazing. In terms of infrastructure, we've had roughly $14 million in upgrades to the quad, the athletic fields, sidewalks, and parking lots, amongst others. In terms of sustainability, almost $2 million, largely on moving water off the campus in a way that it's less disruptive to the residents in Center City. And then, of course, we have a campus in Cooperstown, and there we've spent almost $8 million to upgrade that campus. All right, Jeff.
All right, thank you. Sorry to jump the gun there. But
No, that's my
So thank you, Mike and Bill, for inviting me, and nice seeing some familiar faces and some not. I'm Jeff Katz. I was mayor of Cooperstown till Monday about noon, having served 6 years there and 7 years before that as a trustee. I have a few slides just so you don't have to look at me. This is Cooperstown. From the air, it looks beautiful. It is beautiful, but from the ground, there was a lot of work needed, and there's still more work to be done. From the moment I became mayor in 2012, my main goal was to catch up on decaying village infrastructure. We've done that and improved public infrastructure in many ways that I'll explain. But Mike's kind of introduction is a good segue to my thoughts. I think it is true and imperative that public money to improve infrastructure sends a message to the private business community, which is, if the government cares, or the administration cares about the physical plant enough to invest money in it, then it's worth their time as well to invest. I think that is true. We're seeing it in Cooperstown in many ways, and the atmosphere in Cooperstown has changed for the better in the last 6 years. This is Main Street a few years ago. We got $600,000 plus from the state for a Green Innovation Grant Program to fix Main Street. The village would never have been able to afford in its budget a Main Street improvement, which was sorely needed. Business people on that street said, you know, it is tired, it's fallen apart. We just didn't have the wherewithal. This was crucial. Here's the after of part of the street. If you've been there, the sidewalks are better, there's plantings, there's metal railings, and it has kind of rejuvenated Main Street, along with things that the board did a few years ago, which was pass a law on outdoor dining, which got people on the street and has changed the atmosphere downtown. The next thing we're going to do is a transportation enhancement program. We got $1.7 million towards a $2.2 million project. It'll continue the design of the GIGP project to all the business district streets in Cooperstown, which gives some continuity. For those of you who know Cooperstown, the traffic light is both unsafe and odd and pedestrian unfriendly, and we're squaring it off, and not only will it make it safer, we're keeping the basic look with the swinging light with some lampposts, but this part of Main Street, Upper Main Street, where there are stores, if you ever eat at Mel's, you see people stop on that corner and turn around and go. They don't quite understand that there's more business districts. So again, TEP is federal money that's administered from the state, but improving Main Street leads to a different feeling for Main Street, and we're seeing that in a lot of ways. Another important project for us was Village Hall at 22 Main Street, which houses the village government, the library, and the Art Association. But it is in many ways kind of the social center on Main Street. It's a Main Street anchor that had fallen into serious disrepair. This is only part of it. As we were working on the building, you know, our contractors were putting hands into areas where there should have been stuff and there wasn't. We got $120,000 from Empire State Development as part of an at least $500,000 multi-year plan to improve that building. One of the things we did just in the last year was we took the ballroom, which was an acoustic nightmare with terribly unsafe lighting, and we improved it. We made it acoustically friendly. It was used for the Glimmerglass Film Days Film Festival. Our improvements alone let legal capacity go to 200. It had been 50. And now there are films up there, lectures, events. It's bringing people down to Main Street for other things, which helps Main Street overall. Here's work being done. Here's partially, you know, the completed project. The front looks better than it has looked in decades, and there's more work to come. Other things that are not slide-worthy, but worth mentioning, we needed to rebuild our sewer plant. We needed to rebuild it about 30 years ago. We got $5.8 million in grants towards a $7.5 million project. We will not have to raise rates at all. This might sound not that interesting, but Bassett Hospital, our single biggest employer and at least one of the top 2 biggest employers in the county, uses our water and sewer at about 30%. So for Bassett not to have to incur any rate increases for utilities is crucial to economic development. Doubleday Field, we want to improve both the field and the campus itself. We're hoping to get some word on funding we've been pushing to get. There's more paving, more infrastructure coming. And that's a lot, but it's only one part of the equation. The other has been tackling a lot of outdated and unproductive zoning laws. We did some small changes. Railroad Avenue, which had been traditionally the commercial district of the village, had morphed into a situation where you could not do any commercial activity in that district. You could build a house in the commercial district. We flipped it. The distillery opened. Michelle Kennedy bought a house that had been vacant for years and is now filled with law offices. Soon after, the village board approved a special permit for the Railroad Inn. There's a new hotel in Cooperstown, so those things are a big deal. We also adopted a planned district development, which basically allows the board to field concepts that may not fit into the zoning map, but are worthy. And we had one already been approved. It was from the Bank of Cooperstown. We expect more to come. So I would say that the Board of Trustees and the other boards are way more business friendly than ever. We kept CVS in the village. They were moving off Main Street, in or out of the village. We knew that. We kept them in the village. That was important. The Railroad Inn are two, like I said, those are two big examples of projects that were approved and guided by the village. We want to see economic development. We want to see it appropriate to the village. I've heard from business people who have said over the last 6 years the atmosphere has changed in the village in terms of knowing that there's room to do stuff. And there's value in being in the village. We know that, and now we've kind of made it clear to businesses that we want to see that happen. So to create a better landscape, both physically and legally, we've been actively pushing economic development and some housing plans that we hope will bear some fruit in the next few years. But we all know change is hard, even if we've lived here a short time, like I have, 15 years, or lived here longer. We know what that attitude is, right? We know what kind of negative feedback we can get, right? Don't generate new revenue. Why are you changing the laws? You're selling our soul for a grant. We hear that, I'm sure Gary hears that. And we listen to that feedback for what it's worth. And the reality is that, you know, what I saw as a new person in Cooperstown is the status quo had led to provable results. All you have to do is look out the window. The streets were falling apart, the sewer plant was held together with rubber bands and Band-Aids. Businesses were opening in the corridor between Cooperstown and Oneonta instead of in Cooperstown, and that status quo was unsustainable. We didn't have the funds through revenue or grants, we had laws that weren't productive, and it was clear the village was not going to improve by staying the same. That status quo is not working. So there are still challenges, we know that's true. If you've been on Main Street, the CVS has relocated, but that's an empty storefront, the general store closed. But I actually think that, you know, while we're in a transitional phase, and I think it's good for communities to always be in some transitional phase. If you're stuck, you're stuck. But I think it's a positive transition. I think Cooperstown's going to be better and more vibrant as the years go on. So thank you, I'll look forward to your questions.
Next up is Dr. Alex Thomas.
Somewhere in here, isn't it? So, thanks for coming. I'm going to recap actually some work. When I first got here at SUNY Oneonta in 2000, about a year or two after that, I did some work with some folks at Cornell University at the Community Rural Development Institute. And we started looking really specifically, primarily in New York State, but also kind of around the Northeast, at ways in which institutions of higher education impact more broadly the communities that they were in, but in particular also the downtown locations. So I'm going to just kind of go through and talk about the kind of things that we have, give some examples. I could easily talk about this for about 45 minutes. I could do that whether you want to hear it or not. And frankly, by the time that 45 minutes is done, you won't want to hear anything. So I'll try to actually keep it to the 10 minutes if I can. But basically, notice up here, we found really 5 basic ones, and arguably the first 3 are very direct investments from the college, very direct involvement. And then 4 and 5 are things that are much more indirect, and I'll just explain what this means. Direct investment, neighborhood stabilization and revitalization, cultural enrichment, niche markets, and expertise in the student sandbox, which we'll talk about in a minute. And it helps to think about that when we're talking about these things, to actually look at some very specific examples. And one of the better examples we have is actually fairly local, and it's Colgate University. And Colgate University, a number of years ago, those of you who haven't been in Colgate University, Colgate is in a town that's much smaller than Oneonta. It's a little town called Hamilton, which is about the size of Cooperstown. And it has a very, very, let's just say very difficult and very expensive school to get into located there, which of course is Colgate. And one of the things that you find in towns in that size range of around 2,000 to 5,000, is that there's some real difficulty in actually maintaining the downtown areas kind of across the board. To the point that actually that an urban sociologist like me would look at communities like that, and it's not so much a matter of when you find a community that works, it's really more a matter of when I find a community that works, what's different about this place that it's still operating. In the case of Cooperstown, of course, it's primarily baseball. In Hamilton, it was primarily Colgate University. Colgate University nevertheless discovered by the time they got into the late 80s and early 90s that there was some degradation in the downtown area. Some of the buildings were aging, of course all buildings are aging, and they were starting to look at it. And they actually got together, they created with the town of Hamilton, the village of Hamilton, the Alumni Association, which has probably some resources that our Alumni Association really wishes it could have. And they created what's called the Partnership for Community Development. And what they did over time is they started buying up large numbers of properties in the downtown area. What you're looking at here is if you've been in downtown Hamilton, this is actually really the major intersection in downtown Hamilton. In the upper left, this is a building that was at the corner at the time that they bought it. It was more or less vacant, and it looked, well, you can see what it looked like. Right. And what Colgate did is, in the lower right-hand corner, you can see the exact same building. They added a clock tower. I'm hoping that eventually we build a nice new clock tower here on campus. Hint, hint. Maybe the Klinuski Tower. In any case, they added a clock tower to the building. They fixed it inside and out. They moved the campus bookstore from the campus, which is a short distance away, into downtown Hamilton. Part of this also created a small event center on the second floor of this building. I had a number of years ago actually gave a talk up there. It's a very nice, warm space to give a talk, and of course there was a coffee shop downstairs, which meant that that always helps. So direct investment. We also see neighborhood stabilization. Union College is actually a very good example of this. Since 1998, Union College has purchased and renovated over 80 homes in and around Union College. Now the reason you would do this is actually very similar to why Colgate University would invest. And that's that it turns out that if you're going to spend $50,000, $60,000 a year sending your kid to college, you typically want the neighborhood around it to look somehow safe. They want it to look nice, they want it to look pretty, and all the kind of things that they are. So what Union did is they went around, they bought large numbers of houses in and around the Union campus, and then they started partnerships, for instance with Trustco Bank, to identify prospective homeowners. We don't really need to sign into the store, do we? Does that when I'm in class too. If you neighborhood children within the neighborhood, the area is actually a low-income area that Union is in. Neighborhood children were eligible for scholarship money in the area. There were also special incentives for college employees, both faculty and general staff, to buy these homes and buy in the Union neighborhood, pretty much within walking distance, all in an attempt to try to revitalize this particular area, stabilize and revitalize this area, really quite close to downtown Schenectady. You can actually get a sense that's actually the boulevard right next to Union College, and you can see where they've taken a lot of these historic homes, they've completely renovated them and actually sold them, not necessarily at a loss, but not necessarily at a high profit either. Northeastern University, some of my former stomping grounds. The city participated with a partnership with the city of Boston called the Avenue of the Arts. And what this involved, and I will confess I was actually there in the beginning of this back in the late 1990s, is it created a broad-based coalition of the major institutions in the area, not just Northeastern, also the Museum of Fine Arts, the Church of Christ Scientist, which is not far from there, a number of other institutions in this area, creating something called the Avenue of the Arts, which involved more or less a complete rebuilding of Huntington Avenue, which is a major thoroughfare through that part of Boston, trying to tie the area together with common aesthetic features, rebuilding, new sidewalks, things of that nature. Ends up looking something like this. If you look in the upper left, you can actually see the Museum of Fine Arts on the left, and you can see some of the streetscapes, some of the new street lights and things like that. Lining the street. You can see it heading in the other direction as well, down into the Mission Hill neighborhood. Those are more or less direct ways that we see colleges getting involved. We also see other ways that colleges impact local communities, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. The idea here really is if we have a niche market, to try to capitalize on that niche market. And of course, some of us are familiar with both of these institutions up here. The Red Jug, I discovered today actually trying to get that particular logo. Apparently that's something of a chain. I had no idea. They have them in other SUNY colleges. And the B side, I think I know half of you from the B side. But we all know what that is. And we're able to get that because there are a series of niche markets that are available in a lot, not just Oneonta, a lot of other college towns. There are, of course, the college students. And of course, if you go into the Red Jug past 6 o'clock, that's when the faculty are bailing out of there because we start running into our students. But the beer is cheap. And then, of course, there's the B side, and the B side is really able to survive to a large extent because there is a sizable, educated upper middle class here in Oneonta. And that's something that a lot of other communities don't necessarily have. Being able to identify and really build on those kind of niche markets can really help, not necessarily with the college directly, but can really help to enhance the quality of life for everybody in the college, in a college town. But it can also then have an indirect effect on the college itself. In that one of the things that we would sell for faculty and for other staff here at SUNY Oneonta is it's not New York City. We're not going to compete head-to-head against an urban environment. But what we do have is we have some interesting lifestyle choices. You can come here and spend your lunch hour walking on the college trails just behind campus, and at the end of the day you can go downtown and there's places to go. We also see this in other ways. If you look up here, I guess that's kind of good. You don't really get the effect. We've had an ongoing study of businesses in downtown Cooperstown. I worked with Carol Waller a long time ago to get data back to 1979. I update the data every 2 years, so we have, well actually let's put it this way, the 2017 data is sitting in a notebook on my office waiting for SPSS. That's the statistics program that needs to get typed into. But you can kind of get the effects of baseball in downtown Cooperstown if you can kind of sit back from this particular chart. This is basically every address in Cooperstown and coded by what was in that particular location. 1979, you see a lot more pinks. You see a certain amount of greens. That's actually what we call community-oriented business. The CVS would be an example of that, clothing stores, things of that. By 2003, you see a lot more purples and greens, and more pinks even. But basically, you see a color change, and that's actually the impact of a baseball-oriented economy, which is really a highly tourism-oriented economy. And this is the kind of impact that you see with a niche-oriented, a narrow niche-oriented economy. One of the things that we found in this initial study back in 2003 is that chances are, without baseball, tourism, that the central business district of Cooperstown was going to lose a lot of those businesses that they lost anyway. Basically what happened is it wasn't so much that baseball took over downtown Cooperstown, it's that businesses were going out of business and it got taken over. The last thing is probably worth noting is what, for lack of a better term, we'll just call it the expertise, and I like to think of it as the student sandbox. Faculty at any campus, including here at SUNY Oneonta, are constantly involved in research, creative activities, and also the engagement of student projects. And actually the ongoing research in Cooperstown that I mentioned is arguably a good example of this, but we see this in other areas as well. Tim Welch actually on Friday unveiled a video, a documentary that's also available on YouTube that looks at the Albany suburb of Wilton, New York. It's called Wilton 200. He is a videographer, a video producer. It's very well done, and it's worth noting that at a college like this, we have those kind of talents and those kind of resources available. Basic research going on in master's theses up at the Cooperstown Graduate Program. If you've ever had a chance to go through a very rich collection of master theses, one of the things that you're struck by, at least one of the things that I'm struck by, is that Otsego County is probably one of the best studied rural counties in the United States. There's just a wealth of information that you just can't find on rural areas almost anywhere else. The impact of radio, for instance, from WGY, areas, what happened to the local area as farming went into decline, just a wealth of information just by the basic functioning of how the college operates on a day-to-day basis. Something one of my colleagues did, Ho-Han Lung, last year in a senior seminar in sociology, brought students up to the Hartwick Seminary historical site. Notice it's SUNY Oneonta students doing this. Brought our students up to the Hartwick Seminary site, a site that certain people in the town of Hartwick are concerned is facing certain development pressures, and looked at ways of how could we preserve, how could we sort of play up the historical significance of a site like the Hartwick Seminary site. And what you see here, this is only really a small part of it, but they came up with some rather interesting ideas. To be honest, the idea of an aerial bridge crossing Route 28 is probably not really in the financial future for the town. But what's probably worth noting is this: when we start thinking about projects like this, students and faculty have a freedom to think, if you will, big, to think outside of a five-year window. So that, for instance, when myself or my colleague Greg Fulkerson and I are thinking about development, we're not thinking over 5 to 10 years, we're thinking over a 30 to 50 year, what's going to happen in 30 years, what's going to happen in 50 years, what are the big technological shifts that could impact a community like Oneonta. One of the things that we start thinking about is things like high-speed rail. One of the things that we think about is just the access of how do you integrate a place like Oneonta on the fringe of the Northeast Corridor and better integrate it with something like that. And that's one of the things that faculty have the privilege to be able to do. So to wrap this up, because I know I'm probably very close to the end of that 2 minutes, what do all these things have in common when we look at what colleges are able to do? And really it comes down to these. We have local and broad-based community development coalitions. It's important to have ties between the college and the local community. We have the academic institutions, government, and private business all working together towards this. And we see a real effort to make sure that everybody is well represented. So with that said, I think I'm done. I'll turn it over to Barbara Hand, right?
Thanks, Alex.
Sure.
So next up is Barbara Ann, and however downtown Oneonta looks, Oneonta town itself is growing. South Side is a magnet for the region for shopping, and so if we have people coming to Oneonta, they could certainly come to downtown.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, everyone. I represent 600 members countywide, which has 10,000 employees. So those 10,000 employees are shopping local, they're living in our community, they're volunteering on community boards. So I'm really excited to represent Otsego County. I'm a proud alumni here from SUNY Oneonta, and I think SUNY Oneonta does a great job in capturing their alumni and keeping them engaged with campus activities and with the growth of the community. So some things I'd like to share with you about the Chamber, things that are new, and priorities and initiatives that we're working on. January this past year, we consolidated our efforts with Otsego Now, which is our economic development arm of the county. And we relocated our offices. We're down at 189 Main Street in downtown Oneonta. And we relocated to the 5th floor with Otsego Now, with the new CEO, Jody Zavrevsky. And it was through his invite and his outreach to say, you know, I think one of the main things for economic development is to all be under one roof and working together. I said, absolutely, completely supported that. Worked on his request, and within a month we relocated our offices, and we were also with the Small Business Development Center. So all of these entities working together really have helped us to share best practices, to help our existing businesses to grow, and to help people to find us that are downtown that want to just come in and visit with us. So we've been meeting with a number of area businesses. I've been introducing Jody to a lot of our small businesses that have expressed that they're in growth mode. And some of the things that we do together to help existing industries is we have available all our sites and buildings that are for rent so that people can identify where the growth opportunities are, including in the Oneonta Business Park. We compile demographic and workforce data. We work with our partners in education and healthcare to promote the healthy living that Otsego County has here. It's something that we take great pride in. We have a great healthcare system. So those are things that people that are relocating to the area look for. We help people identify grant opportunities and pair them to financial opportunities in the county, whether it's grant applications through working with the city of Oneonta, through their microenterprise grants program, or working with the county, and then our partners at the economic development in the Mohawk Valley region, helping businesses submit what's called CFA applications. Oftentimes, the Chamber of Commerce will write letters of support for those businesses to grow. We love to help startup businesses by giving them help with business planning, helping them develop their business plan, marketing efforts, and again, access to capital, something very important to the businesses. We offer a number of seminars in our workspace. Now that we're on the 5th floor, we have a number of sort of workspaces that we can hold seminars for up to 25 to 30 people. And in fact, just yesterday, we had a local organization called CADE, had about 30 area agricultural farmers learning about access to capital. And that's just a tremendous growth area for Otsego County, is our agricultural community. Also, most recently, we hosted through Broome Community College. They received a $75,000 grant through the Department of Labor to help dislocated workers find employment opportunities, especially in the manufacturing realm. So we offered for 2 weeks a manufacturing basic training course, and at the end of that 2 weeks, we had 20 local manufacturers. We hosted a mini job fair, and the 16 participants were placed directly into those jobs. So that was a natural feeder, that career pipeline that we're looking to continue to nurture and grow. Some other initiatives that the Chamber is partnering with Otsego Now is on innovation, learning, placemaking, and reducing disparities. And I'm going to just briefly touch on those items. So from innovation, we're looking at focusing on traded sectors, including advanced manufacturing, biotechnology, advanced manufacturing, information technology, and human services. From that, we are nurturing and supporting those emerging industries that we're seeing, if they're clustered together, that there's growth opportunities, that each business that's thriving can grow upon each other. So we just did a ribbon cutting that Mayor Herzeg represented us at, which was Tenture. They're in the Oneonta Business Park. They are producing or manufacturing these beautiful glamping tents that are being created here in Oneonta and being shipped around the state and elsewhere where there's beautiful landscape, such as Brewery Ommegang. And these are settled right in this beautiful landscape for campers to enjoy, and it's really very beautiful. So those are some wins, so to speak, that we hope to continue to grow upon. Other partnerships that we feel very passionate about is the partnerships with the colleges. Here at SUNY Oneonta, as well as Hartwood College, the access to the intellectual capital of your students. We nurture them by engaging them in internship opportunities with local businesses. I can't tell you how many businesses have come to me sharing the great value of those students being in their businesses. I think the students represent the very best of Otsego County and Oneonta, and that's something I take great pride in. Each year I have 5 interns from both colleges that intern with me at the Chamber, and when I see when they graduate and they use me as a job reference, that they said, oh, we gained so much great knowledge being here in Otsego County and partnering with the Chamber of Commerce and other businesses. So I think that's a huge potential to continue on with internship opportunities. Learning, We work very closely with the local school districts. In fact, I serve on the ONC BOCES board, and I think the K through 12 partnerships is extremely important, that our children are career pathways, giving them those career pathways of what's local, introducing them to manufacturing, introducing them to healthcare, to businesses that in the future will be looking to them to fill their open positions. Right now, there's 600 open positions in Otsego County. When I tell people that, they're like, we thought there weren't jobs here. There are jobs here. And that's something that I take great pride in, is helping people to find those jobs. And oftentimes, it's through those internships that those college students see the potential that's here. Also, the workforce development. We continue to feel the importance of helping our existing businesses to find that talent. They are coming to the chamber asking us for people that just have some of the basic professional skills, showing up on time, being able to be a team player, being creative. So those are things that we offer workshop, professional development seminars. We run Leadership Otsego, which is a program that thankfully to Dr. Klawinski, she turned that over to the chamber about 5 years ago, and we're very grateful to her. It gives a spotlight of Otsego County's growth areas. They learn about county government to all our businesses, but those are our leaders that are representing Otsego County, and that program's running right now. Finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about the areas that our members feel are very important and that tie to the city of Oneonta. The city of Oneonta is a major hub for activity. It has transportation, culture and recreation, public education, housing choices. It is a vibrant city that's growing with authentic neighborhoods, and that's very inclusive of a very welcoming city. And some of the great partnerships that we're working on with the city and opportunities for Otsego, one of my favorite leaders, there's many in the county, is Dan Maskin with Opportunities for Otsego. And he's been tasked with the Poverty to Prosperity initiative through Governor Cuomo. The city of Oneonta was awarded to part of the Poverty to Reduction, it's Empire State Poverty to Reduction Initiative. And I've been assigned to the Poverty Task Force, and we have had a presenter, Dr. Donna Beagle, come to talk about an opportunity conference. And this opportunity conference is going to be happening here in Oneonta on May 12th at the Holiday Inn. And next week, I go for a training to become a navigator. And I think this is an extremely positive opportunity for Oneonta and the surrounding communities, because they're addressing poverty in a way of looking at all of us as community members to be navigators, to take our skills and our talents to help people climb out of poverty. I think it's phenomenal, and I'm proud to go towards this training because I could use some of my skill sets, my connection and love to the area, my understanding of businesses to help people that want to start a business, that want to know about the career opportunities in the county. So you'll hear more about this in the coming weeks, and I hope that some of you will consider becoming a navigator. And finally, I'll close with this. We work with another great organization called LEAF. And a few months ago, there was a charge for the city of Oneonta to become a recovery-friendly city. And it's to address the opioid crisis. And I serve on the opioid crisis task force with Julie Dostal. And I think it is an extremely important and notable work that I'm hearing from our business community that it's a need. So 3 months ago, we partnered with LEAF and the city of Oneonta, and the mayor came to present at the Foothills, and we did a educational seminar, the opioid crisis in the workplace. We had an attorney from him and Howard Patel to come and present, but I think we had almost 60 businesses come out, including community members, and really drill down to the point of the community wants to embrace this and wants to be supportive. And I think Mayor Herzog has been extremely understanding and has created this culture of being accepting to come to positive solutions. These are people that want to go back to work, they want to contribute to our community, and I feel that we could be the first city in New York, for that matter, to be recovery friendly. So we are offering another seminar Thursday, April 19th. We're partnering again with LEAF, and in your packets, there's blue folders by your seat. We'll talk about our featured speakers and our work on this for the opioid crisis. So I thank you so much for this opportunity to present to all of you and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Barbara Ann.
So next we have Mayor Gary Herzog. And Main Street has a lot of empty storefronts, but there are bustling parts of downtown. We have, of course, the parking lot by Beach Street. There are lots of new businesses there, and ends of the block also are very well, Main Street are very well developed.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Bill, for hosting this and for inviting me. It's good to see President Klanuski here. President Klanuski was an active member of our Downtown Revitalization Initiative Planning Committee. It's good to see Mayor Muller here. And it's always good to see Mayor Katz. Yesterday, I was at a meeting of Mohawk Valley Regional Economic Development Council on the same agenda with our new mayor of Cooperstown, Mayor Tillapal. And Alex Thomas was also a member of the group that provided input in putting together our application for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. And he provided us with a lot of very helpful information in setting some direction for the city. But I am not an economist or an urban sociologist, but I get to listen to a lot of people. When you're the mayor, you get to listen to a lot of people. And it seems like nobody is ever shy when they're with the mayor. They feel very comfortable expressing their opinion. And the one thing that I hear over and over again that I've really put more and more value on as we look at building our downtown, building our community, revitalizing, and that is that the downtowns that have been the most successful recently are those that are paying attention what today's young generations are looking for. Those that are not paying attention to that are the ones that are missing the boat. Now, Oneonta has a beautiful, historic downtown. We have a colorful history of a community that was built by railroad workers and their families. But those days are gone. And, you know, I still hear people, wherever I go, people say, remember the good old days when everybody used to go shopping on Thursday night downtown? Well, and that was because the railroad workers got their paychecks on Thursdays. But those days are gone, and they're not coming back. And we as a community need to not be thinking about what Oneonta was, even though our history is important, not be thinking about what Oneonta is today, but we need to be thinking about what Oneonta has the capability and potential to be in the future. Today's young people do have different ideas and different lifestyle thoughts, particularly as they relate to downtown. Young people today want a community that has a sense of authenticity. They want a downtown where you can both live and work. They want a downtown that is pedestrian and bicycle friendly. They want access to quality foods. They want access to local foods. They want a downtown that integrates the arts into their lives. They want easy access to parks and recreation. And they seem to be drawn to shared workspaces. It's not, you know, us older folks, everybody wanted your own space. You didn't want to share space with other people. Younger people like sharing their space. They like sharing ideas. They like networking. They're much better at collaboration than we were, and they enjoy it. Now, recently, we are very proud, and to the envy of communities across the state, to have been selected as the Mohawk Valley winner of Governor Cuomo's $10 million Downtown Revitalization Initiative. And I want to say a few words about what was behind the governor's establishing this competition of the DRI, Downtown Revitalization Initiative. Governor Cuomo made it very clear that he believes that downtowns drive communities. And if you think about it, if you go to look at a new community to consider moving to, whether moving there as an employee or an employer, what's the first place you go to look? You go check out downtown. And if downtown is exciting and vibrant and attractive and there seems to be a lot of cool things happening, you say, well, maybe. We'll look further. If downtown is boring and dull and there's nothing going on there and it's not attractive, you're likely to say, we don't want to go here, and not even look any further. And the governor felt that if upstate cities are going to come back, they have to have a vibrant downtown, and that was the rationale behind them creating the $10 million Downtown Revitalization Initiative competition. So I don't look at the DRI as a job creation initiative. I look at it as a community building initiative. Fortunately for us, at the same time, we have the rail yard project going on, which is a job creation initiative. But we're not going to get employers or employees to come to Oneonta for that if they come here first and check out downtown, and downtown does not look like a very cool place to be. Two of Oneonta's most important assets are unquestionably SUNY Oneonta and Harper College. But if you're a visitor to the city of Oneonta, you could drive the entire length of this city and never know that those colleges are here. And that's not good for the city, and that's not good for the colleges. And we need each other. Colleges need a strong city if they're going to succeed, and the city needs strong colleges if we're going to succeed. So this is something that we need to change. And President Klanuski, as a member of our Downtown Revitalization Initiative Planning Committee, was a strong supporter of integrating the college into our downtown. Our students are among our greatest resources. They bring us energy, they bring us entrepreneurism, culture, innovation, and of course they bring us a little money as well. But we do need to integrate them better into our community, and we need to give them more reasons and more opportunities to stay after they graduate. Both President Klanuski and President Dragovich, as I mentioned, were active members of our DRI Planning Committee. And I think they both have shown a commitment to moving in this direction. As part of our DRI, SUNY Oneonta, under President Klanuski's leadership, has made a commitment to lead an exploration into the creation of an art space in our downtown. If you ask me what an art space is, I'll tell you I don't know, because we don't know. We're going to explore what could work in downtown Oneonta as a center of the arts, whether that means artist lofts, live workspaces, shared gallery, shared workspace, we don't know. We're going to explore it in the course of the next year and see what we come up with. The college administration is also talking about other ways that they can be involved in our downtown community, whether it's looking at some type of shared workspace that the college is involved with, some type of a maker space, and we're also talking about trying to fill the need for downtown housing for college faculty and staff. And you know, I hear from, I think Alex did a survey, I hear from President Klanuski that housing is a big problem for our college faculty and staff. Many want to live in the city of Oneonta, wind up not living in the city of Oneonta because they can't find quality affordable housing here in the city. And that's something that we really have to work on correcting. Supporting some of this is going to be a complete redesign of the streetscape of Market Street. I think most of us would agree that Market Street is not an attractive destination at the moment. A lot of people use it as a bypass to avoid Main Street and travel through there at 40, 50 miles an hour. We want to create a unique streetscape that has an inviting feel of energy and creativity and innovation. We want it to be pedestrian friendly. We want to provide better access to Nero Park, and this is James Dean's thing. He's been pushing me all year. James Dean is here from Cooperstown trustee. He says you need better access to Nero Park, and he's right. So we're going to work and see if we can do that. And this is also what we see as a home for what working with Hartwood College now looks like, the Hartwood College Institute for Sustainable Foods and Beverages. And we're looking for them to co-locate with the New York State Brewers Association. And we're also looking for a place where CADE, which is the Center for Agricultural Development and Entrepreneurship, can have operations that support their membership of small local agricultural entrepreneurs, so that we can really make Market Street, the city of Oneonta, downtown Oneonta, a hub for the growing agricultural entrepreneurs that are developing all around us. Other DRI initiatives that we're working on include, we will be unveiling in the next month a $2.66 million downtown improvement fund. This is money that will be available to all downtown business and property owners in the form of grants. Primary purposes that we're looking to fund are new downtown signs for businesses, new facades, and the development of vacant upper floors on Main Street into quality market rate housing. That's going to be followed by a $370,000 branding and marketing campaign to get the word out regionally, statewide, about who we are and what we have to offer and why you should come and visit, why you should come move here, why you should come live here. That's also going to be followed by a $200,000 project to design and develop new downtown directory signs and new downtown gateway welcoming signs. We will also be working to create better pedestrian connections between Market Street and Main Street. So our downtown revitalization plan has one goal, and that is to make our downtown one that drives people to want to live here, to want to work here, to want to play here, to want to raise their family here. You know, I think Mike mentioned we do have some empty stores, we do have restaurants that come and go, but it's not because we don't have good restaurants, it's not because we don't have good stores, it's because we simply don't have enough people to support them. We need to attract more people to be here, we need to give more people a reason to be here, we need to give more people an opportunity to be here, and we need to give more people good places to choose to live if they do want to move here. So that's what it's all about. I think it was Jeff Katz mentioned the status quo. If there's no change, you're stuck in the status quo. For us, the status quo of Oneonta, it's a beautiful place, it's a wonderful place, it's a community we love, but the status quo is really not all that good for everybody. If you make your living off of the college students, whether it's working here at the college, or renting to them, or selling the type of things that they like to buy, you're doing okay. For the rest of the people in the city, it's a struggle. And we need to diversify our economy so that it is not only based upon college students. One other brief announcement while I'm here is that we just found out last week that we did receive another grant to support our downtown. That is a Restore New York grant to help develop the Stevens building, which is the building adjacent to the Braziz building, which will soon become 4 quality market rate apartments and brand new retail space in the downtown. And that's another beautiful building if you stop to take a look. So, Thank you very much.
Well, so next, do we have any comments that we'd like to make about each other's presentations?
I just want to make kind of a comment on, is it on? Can you hear me till it's on?
Sure.
One of the things as someone who moved here only 15 years ago, and certain people will remind me of that all the time, one of the things that shocks me is the amount of negativity that gets an over amount of play. When we moved here and friends started visiting, or people I met through my writing or as mayor would come and see Cooperstown, they'd be like, how did you pull this off? We lived in Chicago for a lot of years and we had a great life there. Not to be, I'm not kind of like a Pollyanna about the positives, but as Gary said about Oneonta, what I've often said about Cooperstown is, we have the things that people are striving to create. Main streets, old cool buildings, colleges, cultural attractions, medical centers. When we did our comprehensive plan in Cooperstown, one of the planners said, here we are in Cooperstown, a certain contingent just will complain and complain about parking. It's a parking problem, there's not enough spots. They're like, we go to places across the country, they're desperate to create a parking problem. They would dream of having a parking problem and never attain it. So, from a Cooperstown point of view, we have 100 things that other communities would want one of. And yet, and this was part of my kind of, struggle as mayor, is to listen to the criticisms that are valid, but actually not give much credence to the ones that aren't. And I think when we overindulge a fake negativity, it hurts us. It hurts us so much because I shouldn't say this, and I won't say it exactly how I want to. When people come to Cooperstown, often the first people they'll meet will tell them, don't come here. Don't have a business here. You can't have a business here. The board won't, this has changed in my 6 years as mayor. But it had reached the point where the front line of people coming to Cooperstown would be met with, why bother? You shouldn't even be looking to start a business in Cooperstown. And they wouldn't. That's a big hurdle to overcome as mayor, to tell people, no, we want to hear. It might not fit. Not everything fits Cooperstown. This is why I think Gary and I have worked well together. I'm aware of what works in Cooperstown and what doesn't. And Gary's aware of what works in Oneonta and doesn't. They're not competitive. They're things we can complement each other. So as much as you kind of can leave here and explain to people the positives and the negatives, the positives and the challenges, the better off we are as communities, both city, village, county, because there is so much positive resources here that we get bogged down in nonsense that is unproductive. And if we can fight, like I said in my remarks, the attitude change in Cooperstown in a macro way is tangible. Sure, there are people who still say, you're anti-business because you have paid parking. You're anti-business because you won't let me put up the sign I want. I have found, and I know I'm going on, I have found that, if you're not 100% pro a person's business, then you are by default 100% anti-business. It's false. It's a false construct. I don't buy into it. So the more we can kind of present the positives and work towards fixing the negatives, the better we are, instead of saying, Main Street in Oneonta, I've been trying to figure that out for 100 years. I can't, there's no hope. Housing in Cooperstown never happened. New businesses in Cooperstown can't exist. It's not true. It's just not true. And I've seen it in Cooperstown. I see what Gary's doing and the successes and what Oneonta has been able to achieve grant-wise. The more people are aware of that and speak to that, the better off we will all be throughout the whole county. So that's not a comment particularly on anyone's presentation, but I would have gone over my time had I
Jeff mentioned parking. I want to say a couple words about parking. And one, I just want to compliment Jeff on what he did with paid parking in the village of Cooperstown, because he paved the entire village, paid for with other people's money.
Right.
And parking spaces are real estate,
Yep.
and they're worth money. So giving them away is not always a wise thing to do. You wouldn't give away other real estate. But one of the complaints you hear most often from people is about parking. We don't have enough parking. Or if you talk about building something and change, don't take away any of our parking space. As it is, I have to walk too far if I want to go to a restaurant. Yeah. Oneonta has a parking problem. We have way too much parking. If you drive down Main Street, there is an excellent chance that you can park within 50 feet of the store you want to go to. That is not a good thing. Now, nobody ever goes to visit a city because they have a lot of parking. They go to visit a city because there's interesting things to do there, and they go despite the fact that it's hard to park. So one thing that, I've learned as mayor, when I drive downtown and I see it's easy to get a parking space, that's not a good thing. When I have to ride around the block 2 times to get a parking space, I say yes. It means people want to be here, there are things going on, there are things happening. We put way too much value on parking. It's okay to walk a half a block. And if you can't walk a half a block, we do have handicapped parking spaces, and we do have public transportation. But if we're going to focus on parking all the time, we're not going to get any place, because we need to be giving people a reason to come here other than park their car.
Should we open it up for questions?
Hopefully.
Can I sit down?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to say how much I agree with what Gary said about the future, and that it's all about what do young people want. It's so important to build a city, a county, thinking about what young people want, because in my opinion, what they want is a life. And I think it's hard for young people today to plan on a life for themselves, because they're not sure about where they're going to live, or where they're going to work, or whether or not their job is going to last long enough to buy a house or to stay in the community. So I just want to say again how, and Gary said many times, and I agree with that also, we simply need more people. I mean, this 4 words covers everything. We simply need more people. And I think in the whole county, Cooperstown, Oneonta, even everybody doing the very best, it's almost not enough, because we just simply need more people. We need more money coming into the county to build it out, and we need to start replacing people who are getting older, because there's a limit to getting older. And there was an interesting article recently in the Times about 1,200 counties or so around the country. They were talking about wealthy counties. They had a problem because people were dying faster than they were being replaced in the county. And that was really pretty interesting. And these were wealthy counties. Okay. So to me, the key to everything is keeping the young people in mind and helping them build a life, because it's harder for them to build a life today than it might have been for even a high school dropout some years ago. You could have not even finished high school, and you're still going to have a Cape Cod and a pool in the back and a pickup truck in the driveway. But that's hard to do today, harder to do. Just want to pass that along. I'm very supportive of what you're all doing, and of course very supportive of what City County and upstate New York. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I know that most of you know this, but I just want to reiterate it or bring it out more fully. And that is when we look to the future and we think about what kinds of jobs are people gonna have, they are not gonna be working for the railroad. They're mostly not gonna be working for large entities. I know we rely on Bassett Medical Center and we rely on the colleges, but I recently became aware this winter that more than 30% of employed people in the United States are not working for an entity directly. They are contract workers working in the gig economy, and young people are going to be having upwards of 20 jobs in their lifetime. So when we think about places like Pony Farm Road and the industrial centers and so on, that has to be balanced out by providing the infrastructure for people who want to work for themselves, who want to telecommute, who want to do something creative, the entrepreneurs. So one of our alums started a store in Oneonta, the Underground Attic. And when I talked to her, it used to be actually an attic, and now it's on the first floor. She's doing very well, but she sells most of her stuff online through Etsy. And that's why you don't see a lot of people in her store generally, although it's a great addition to Main Street. I think it's a beautiful store. But she's balancing out that brick and mortar location with the online presence. And those are some of the kind of complexities that I think we all have to think about moving into the future.
I do think, so when we were doing our comp plan, we had a woman named Kennedy Smith who does a lot of Main Street economics throughout the country. And one of the things she said, as we would get public feedback and, the more traditional, like, we need, another, we need a men's clothing store. Well, that doesn't even exist. I mean, I've had this jacket for like 30 years. I don't need another men's clothing store. But what she said was the success rates were people like you're talking about, who, they wanted kind of an office or a storefront to benefit from whatever the street traffic was. But really, their business model was some physical and some internet. You see this in Cooperstown, and I can't speak with great knowledge because I don't run their businesses, but look at the Cooperstown Bat Company. Beautiful storefront on Main Street. Tim and Connie Haney bought a business that was thriving, but they made it something different. I don't know how many of you follow baseball, but Jose Altuve is the reigning American League MVP. He is using Cooperstown Bat Company bats on a major league level. It's a huge deal. The Haneys thought, look, we're gonna, we have a storefront, we have people coming by, we have a lot of traffic, we do a lot of business. However, we have a growth plan we think we can do, and they've achieved it. Do I think they'll stay on Main Street forever? I kind of think they'll always have a store there, but their growth is not dependent on whether the induction is 30,000 or 60,000. Other people who are, seemingly succeeding, either they're innovative and have figured out a niche that is more young, younger in its orientation, or it's some kind of combination of distributing online stuff. The distillery is a perfect example. Their growth is not going to be based on how many people come into the distillery. It's going to be based on how many people are carrying their product. Omegang didn't become huge because of the cafe. You can buy Omegang anywhere. So that's kind of the business model I think that can happen on a Main Street in Oneonta, Main Street in Cooperstown, actually in any place in the county where you can get some physical plan if you desire, and it's only a part of your equation. So I think we see it in Cooperstown, you're seeing it in Oneonta, and I think that is going to be where the growth takes place.
I'm wondering what's happening with the food hub, and how would that bring economic growth to Oneonta?
Well, the food hub has an interesting history on how it developed. It goes back to when Dick Miller was mayor, and somebody proposed the idea to Dick about we should have a food hub downtown. And Dick said, what in the world's a food hub? So then Dick went to Sandy Mathis, who was then the head of the Otsego now, the Otsego County IDA, and said, what do you think of having a food hub downtown? And Sandy said, what the hell is a food hub? So Sandy wound up hiring a consultant who was one of the nationally most renowned known consultants on food hubs. And a food hub apparently is a place where farmers bring their food in. It could be aggregated for trucking, it could be processed. It's really almost like a wholesale marketplace.
Because there is the one in Hamden.
Right, Lucky Dog, right. And so the consultant came in and spoke to people in the area, whether it's consumers or growers or producers of food, business community, and generated a report that said it really is not that much of a need for a sustainable food hub in Oneonta. But we think, given your location with so many new people who are entrepreneurs getting into the market, being that you have, you're in the middle of higher education, you have two colleges right here in Oneonta, you have Delhi, you have Cobleskill, it's not that far away, that we think that this is a perfect location for a food and beverage innovation center, which is not so much a location to actually take product and aggregate it and ship it, but a place where the smartest people can come together and work with the people who are just getting into the business and figure out new and better ways of doing things. So the idea became a innovation center for food and beverage. As we've moved forward, Hartwick College has expressed a lot of interest in getting involved in this. And that is because sustainable food and beverage, local food and beverage, is one of the fastest growing industries in the country. People are really interested in this. And Hartwick College is thinking, there are probably young people who are graduating high school who are thinking, I want a career in sustainable foods and beverages. Now, whether that's actually growing foods or packaging them or producing them or marketing them, whatever it may be, they're thinking that they could put together a program where somebody could come and major in a career in sustainable foods and beverages. And that's why they are now interested in taking the lead on this program and making it the Hartwick College Institute for Sustainable Foods and Beverages. So that is where we're going right now, is we're working with Hartwick College on what originally started as a food hub and then was called an innovation center, is now being looked at as the Hartwick College Institute for Sustainable Foods and Beverages.
So in that respect, it might bring more students who want that type of training to come to Oneonta.
And again, our downtown revitalization is not about direct job creation. It's about building a community where there are people. If we have a higher education institute downtown, we're going to have more people downtown. More people means we'll have more successful restaurants, we'll have more successful retail shops. We have a more vibrant downtown, more people want to live here. So it's all just a building block towards creating a stronger economy and eventually creating more jobs. It's all about getting more people on the street.
Thanks, all of you guys, for your presentations. I have a question about business development. It seems like there are two kinds of businesses. Ones that are sort of locally focused, the like business opens to serve the people who are already in Oneonta, like Autumn Cafe kind of place, and then there are places that are unique enough that they would actually bring people to the county, like Omegang is a good example. How are your efforts more focused on the first or second category, and how do if we need more people, then we need more of those kind of destination businesses. How do we recruit that kind of stuff? And is that something that can be homegrown, like Chobani, for example, or is it the kind of thing that we recruit somebody from outside and interest them in locating in Otsego County?
as we put together our downtown revitalization initiative plan, some of the criticism that we had was that, well, you're gonna bring in a food innovation center. That's not a business. Nobody's going to, that's not gonna create jobs. It's not going to support a living. But the reality is that we don't have the ability to create businesses. We don't have the ability to attract people who want to open a business here. They do their own studies, they know their demographics, they know whether there's enough people here for them to come here or not. That's really not up to us. But what we can do is we can create other attractions that bring more people here, that will then eventually create the demographics that will attract the Trader Joe's of the world, or the men's clothing stores, or the other types that want to come here. Government really doesn't have the ability to bring businesses here, but we need to create other reasons for more people to be here, so that then that will drive businesses to come.
So let me follow up from a Cooperstown point of view. So let me back up by saying, the successes in Cooperstown, historically, don't come from the people who say, keep things the same. So you can look at the creation of Bassett Hospital and its growth, the creation of the Hall of Fame. In 1899, no one was saying, what would be great for this community? It came from someone who had a presence in the community and said, I'm going to put this here. So this idea of coming up with a food hub, it doesn't work, let's talk about it this way, being open to all of these ideas is important. From a Cooperstown governmental point of view, all we felt we could do was investigate and keep investigating the things that are not working, that are making people tell other people don't go to Cooperstown for a business. We've achieved that in some ways. What I consider pro-business is the village is supposed to set a template that makes it somewhat able for a business to come in. It may work, it may not work, the rents might be too high, this kind of an artificial rent market in part of the village. I would say we are more pro-business in a general sense. So that might mean an existing business growing, a new business coming in. I always found that people, and Barbara knows, I've said this to her before, people who say they're pro-business tend to be pro their own business. And they're not particularly interested in a new hotel if they own a B&B. And they're not interested in a new restaurant if they have a restaurant. So the village government's role is not to use what people used to say a few years ago about picking winners and losers before people started slamming companies on Twitter from the White House. People used to say that, you're not supposed to pick winners and losers. Governmentally, we've tried to change the laws to make sure we're not doing that. But if someone is local and wants to expand, let us know. You have to go through some regulation because we do value our historic look, which is to some degree the product we sell, right? So it's important that Cooperstown is still Cooperstown. You can be open to all of that. From an economic development point of view, the village government has tried to talk to people about housing, if they're interested in housing, and have talked to new businesses if they're a new business, and have tried to, we have the Board of Trustees has a public hearing coming up in April of a hotel in the residential district that cannot expand its usage because it's a special permitted use, but they want to have like 3 or 4 weddings a year. I'm not going to be there, so I'm trying to influence the vote, but I will say that, they've proven to be a good business, a successful business. It's called the Landmark Inn. They just were named one of the top 25 B&Bs in the country, kind of in the hemisphere, because the article included Canada and South America. Do we want them to do better? Sure. Does it have to be in the context of the neighborhood and the village? Sure. But there's room to do all of those things, and I think it's beholden on the village government, the city government, to create an atmosphere where any of those things can happen, and the people who are in positions of decision-making know enough about their zoning laws, their neighborhoods, their city, to say, this can work for us. So I think you can do all of it at the same time, but I was mayor of a much smaller place than Gary, so it might be easier for me to say that.
From the Chamber of Commerce standpoint, though, we see the private sector helping to drive the industry clusters that I mentioned. So, for example, advanced manufacturing, Tenter found Oneonta attractive because of the existing manufacturing clusters, and they were able to form partnerships with some of the area businesses to get certain supplies that they need. So it's a natural feeder. I work with another manufacturer, Astrocom, that creates the headsets that they work with the Department of Defense. Meanwhile, there's another company in Oneonta called Mamco that creates the plastic that goes into those headsets. So there's a synergy between those two companies. So our economic development approach is looking at these industry clusters and building upon our existing businesses, and that will attract new business to those industries. So I'm very excited about some of the progress that we're already making and the collaboration with Otsego now.
You know, something we haven't spoken about when it comes to attracting more business to the area is housing. You know, Oneonta we have two problems. We don't have enough housing, we don't have enough jobs. And some people will say, you can't build any new housing because you don't have the jobs here, so there's nobody going to come here to live in those houses. Other people will say, you're never going to be able to attract significant employers to come here because you don't have any housing for the workforce to live in. And so nobody's going to build in a place where there is not sufficient housing for their workforce. And that's one of those catch-22s. And what's the way out of it? The only way that I can see out of it is we have to do both at the same time, a little at a time. But if we listen to, every time we propose new housing, if we listen to people that say, you can't build new housing, and usually the people who are saying it are people who are already landlords and they don't want the competition. But they will say, you can't build new housing because there aren't the jobs to support it. If we listen to them, we'll never build new housing. But on the other token, we're going to have, we can't get people to come in because you talk to employers and one of the things they'll say is, you don't have the housing to support us if we were to come here. So the only thing you can do is you have to take a leap of faith and build both at the same time to support each other. It's not easy. There's no magic solution.
So we have time for one more question or comment, and then if our panel is able to stay, we can speak with them privately.
I just wanted to speak from the point of view of one of the, I don't think we're young, but we're in the family starting part of our lives, and she's got a baby. And I'm from the area originally, and I moved to Oneonta 2 years ago, and I bought a bunch of buildings in town, and I've been focused on, I couldn't find any place to rent that wasn't really crummy, and I was seeing the need for, it's just a cute apartment, not a college apartment, nothing, it doesn't have to be fancy, whatever. I knew if I was looking for that kind of thing, there would be other people doing that too. So my husband and I have been kind of fixing up some properties and just trying to get them, boost the quality level. And we're obviously really interested in seeing the town thrive. We're about to do a big renovation on the house we bought for ourselves. And there are days where I feel really good about the choices to live here and stay here. But I'm generating my own work for myself, and I have doubts sometimes about if it's a good choice. And the main thing that makes me think that is that sometimes I just am at a loss for what to do. And I know that sounds really basic, but where to go, where to spend my money, because I would be happy to spend it. I wander around Main Street around Christmas time and I'm like, okay, how much can I buy at Razzle Dazzle? How many books can I buy? I'm gonna buy tons of books for presents, go to Artware, try to buy stuff. And I'm looking I'm looking for places to spend money, so I don't have to go to Southside or whatever. And